Hello people, how you doing? Scotty.
I'm no communist, I'll tell you that right now. I believe a man should own his own house and car and cow. I like this private ownership, I want to be left alone. Let the government run its business and let me run my own.
So folks, as I had pointed out in a previous video, that the American healthcare system is not a free market. The United States of America has not seen free market healthcare for well over 100 years.
America has a wonderful healthcare system, but it is incredibly expensive. Why are costs so high?
Costs are high because to the extent that the federal government is involved and that third parties basically collude with the federal government and the corporate machine, the free market is not involved. And as much as the statists would like to maintain that the current state of healthcare and the economics of healthcare in the United States is a failure of the free market, it's actually an absence of the free market.
And I had pointed that out in my video on the American Medical Association, in which it's important to understand from the supply and demand perspective what I've explained from the American Medical Association, which is part of the reason for why the costs are so high. Many people in my own country love to use the example of American healthcare. They say, well, if you are so against the NHS, why don't you go and live in America and experience their healthcare system? Oh, how it's so expensive and all the rest of this. If you fall and break your arm, you'd be paying thousands. Whilst that may be true, I do not advocate the American healthcare system today or for the past 100 years because it's a socialist, corporatist based system. It is not capitalist, it is not a free market in healthcare. A free market in healthcare means that there is a straight transaction between the consumer and the provider. The government is not involved. As I explained in the video about the American Medical Association, the costs were shot through the roof as a result of government granted monopoly that closed down 123 odd medical schools over a period of time, the increase of the population, and if you understand supply and demand, why that would have been part of the reason for the cost going through the roof. However, that is not the only reason. The other part of the reason is the very fact that the American healthcare system is over-regulated by the government.
Why are conventional hospitals so top-heavy with high-cost administrative personnel?
Part of the reason is that the giant hospitals actually like the regulations that put their smaller competitors out of business. Jim Epstein at Reason Magazine has told me that the smoking gun he oftentimes looks for a good story of crony capitalism sort of corruption is industry consolidation. And these giant and awful regulations that the hospitals oftentimes complain about behind closed doors, they're celebrating because they know that while they're onerous to some degree for the giant hospitals, they're completely debilitating for their smaller competitors. That's the honest truth of it.
The government's over-regulation is causing high costs. It's stamped out the competition of the smaller hospitals, and the fewer hospitals, of course, with the higher increase of the population, the higher consumer demand, then of course there is going to be the higher costs. But there is also what we call the third-party payer system.
A major problem with America's healthcare system is that consumers, for the most part, do not directly pay for healthcare. Instead, they use a third-party payer system that cripples market forces. Regardless of the Supreme Court's Obamacare decision, this is a problem that should be fixed. When we buy goods and services with our own money, we are very careful about how much we spend and how we spend it. We tend to shop around in order to find the best quality goods at the best price. But when somebody else is footing the bill, the price doesn't matter so much, and people don't have any incentive to be smart shoppers.
Does the third-party payer system undermine the doctor-patient relationship demanded by the Hippocratic Oath?
It certainly does. The old the old saying is, whose bread I eat, his song I sing. And if the physician's compensation is derived from a third party other than the patient, then ultimately conflicts will arise. And when they do, it'll be the individual or the group paying for the person's care, not the actual patient whose interests will be represented. So it's a very distorting influence, and is the primary reason that healthcare costs are high.
So the NHS is not the alternative to the American healthcare system. The NHS is actually more expensive. And when we talk about the word free is not free. There's no such thing as free. What you have to understand is that in order to pay for so-called free things, you pay for that by compensating in other areas of the economy. In other words, what that means is, in order to pay for your free healthcare, you pay for that by compensating by having lower paid wages, or it could mean higher interest rates or higher inflation, the higher costs of living, fewer university placements, fewer college placements, higher unemployment. All of these things go into paying for the free things. And this is what a lot of people do not understand. So the third-party payer system is what the United States has today, and this is a very large reason for the very high costs. And of course, not to forget, the government has struck a collusion with the private pharmaceutical companies, etc., and all of this has driven costs through the roof. So the alternative is not the NHS. We need to get government out of the way. We need to open up the competition, and in order to solve the problem, as I explained on the supply and demand issue, we need to increase the number of medical doctors, the hospitals, and of course have strong freedom of choice within the healthcare system, a free market. Please also check out my friend's video on the American healthcare system, which is a fantastic video that does explain quite a lot. Like I explained on the other video as well, you can also check out, which was on Hinchingbrook. Hinchingbrook was a private hospital that basically far outperformed every state-run hospital in the country. Now that should give you an indication of how inefficient the NHS is. Was it due to a lack of funding? The answer is no. What you must understand is that the Labour Party had poured billions into the NHS in the past, and they had done so because the NHS was failing. And the reason why the NHS is a failure is because central planning is impossible, and when you mess with the price mechanism, you end up with a misallocation of resources. And of course, you end up with neglect and long waiting lines. The NHS has more or less become a religion. It's become a church. In other words, the words more affordable or free has become more important than people's own lives at risk. A 68-year-old man from Wales was dying of a heart attack, and his wife had phoned for an ambulance 5 times, and despite that, the man was left to die of a heart attack. When the police had investigated to find out why this was, the NHS had responded with the very fact that he was on a waiting list. That is not good enough. This is sadly all too common, and a young lassie about 5 years of age from my own home city in Glasgow had to wait 55 hours in order to get treated. 55 hours she waited, yet the young lassie's mouth was split wide open. Again, that is ridiculous. Please also check out my other friend's video on the NHS. He's had his own bad experience in the past, and it's the reason why he's moved in support of supporting the free market in healthcare. I think it's vitally important to look at these things. So anyway people, I hope you've enjoyed the video. I hope it's been educational for yourself. If you have any questions, feel free to ask in the comment section below, and I'll be sure to get back to you. Thank you for watching my video, and I shall talk to you later. Cheers. So folks, you can check out my photography channel. I just recently got things up and running, got my introduction video done for that. You can also check out the 2 videos as I explained on the AMA monopoly, as well of course on the Hinchingbrook hospitals. Don't forget you can check that out. Like the video below if you liked it, you know, subscribe to the channel if you haven't subscribed, and of course you can share the video, favourite or whatever. And don't forget you can check out my Patreon account and my Facebook and Twitter. And anyway, hope you've enjoyed the video and I shall talk to you later. Thank you for watching. Cheers.